This is the Schueller Observatory. It houses a 14-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, which is this telescope behind me. We do photometry with this, which is basically we are measuring the amount of light that is coming from certain objects in the sky.
So the Schueller Observatory has, I guess, two purposes. One is to train students to do scientific research in astronomy, and the other is to share our love of astronomy with the Lowell community.
So this right here is a refractor telescope. When someone thinks of a telescope, this is probably the first thing that pops into their mind. There's just some lenses at the front that are bringing light to a focus in the back. This one up here is a reflecting telescope.
It's a telescope which has an aperture about 14 inches wide, and it collects light in that big area, and the light goes down inside a tube and bounces off a mirror which is curved. The kind of mirror that's at the bottom of the tube is the same kind of mirror that you'd have as a makeup mirror or a shaving mirror. So when you look in one of those mirrors, your face looks bigger because it magnifies. And so it's doing the same job. It's collecting light and it's magnifying it. And then the light gets bounced off a secondary mirror and ends up going through a hole in the back of the mirror to a camera. People sometimes think that power of telescope is best measured in magnification, but it turns out that's not actually all that important. The atmosphere of the Earth makes everything blurry, so you can only magnify about 100 times, roughly speaking, before you just lose everything in a blur. So all astronomical telescopes magnify by a factor of roughly about 100, something like that. Where a telescope beats the eye is that big collecting area. So the human eye has a pupil, right, which is about 5 millimeters in diameter, but the telescope has a diameter of about 50 centimeters. So it gets many, 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 many times more light, and so it can see things about 1 million times fainter than you can see with the unaided eye.
Some of the different things that we have studied in the past, not personally for me, this is just what other people have studied, is they have measured supernova, and basically when the star explodes and you have that huge flash in the sky, you then can use the telescope to actually monitor how that dies down. You also can detect exoplanets, which are planets around other stars, using this telescope using something called the transit method, which is basically when you're looking at the light of a star, when the planet goes in front of that star, there causes a dip in the light of that star. So when you're measuring the light over a long period of time, you then create something called a light curve, which is basically a graph of the amount of light. And then if you have dips every so often at the exact same timing of the same period, that then tells you that there is most likely an exoplanet around that star. And exactly, you can find like a whole bunch of stuff out about it. It's super cool.
So we're actually able to connect to the telescope remotely. So I was able to do everything that I needed to from home, but primarily what I did was I had a big Excel sheet full of a whole bunch of different stars, and I would use a software program to plot those graphs and observe them. The research, when I did the internship over the summer, I looked at the graphs of the brightness of stars and how it changed over time, and tried to learn things about those stars that I was looking at based on that change in brightness. It can definitely tell us what kind of star it is, and you can see if a comet or an asteroid has passed in front of that star. You can tell that based on how its brightness will change as it passes in front of the star. I came to participate in the observatory through a scholarship that I got from the university, which allowed me to find an internship in something that I was interested in and do that over the summer after my freshman year. And so I decided that I wanted to do something related to space, and so I reached out and was able to get an internship here and learned a whole lot about space during that time, and it was really great.
I'd say my favorite part of the sky to observe, just coming from like my perspective as much more of a hobbyist, is the winter sky, in particular Orion and the area around it. The constellation Orion has, I don't even know the number, but lots of really bright and interesting nebulae that are really nice to look at. There's a very bright star-forming region in Orion where even from here in Lowell, you can actually see some part of it with the naked eye. And that actually makes it somewhat of a challenge to photograph, because it's very easy to overexpose that bright portion of it while underexposing the rest of it. So yeah, there's a bit of a challenge there in getting the range right. And there's also, if you've ever seen like Hubble pictures of like the Horsehead Nebula or few others. There's lots of really interesting large-scale structure that only shows up on cameras. It's a really cool part of the sky.
One thing that's interesting is that stars will twinkle and planets don't, so that's one way that you can tell the difference between them when you're looking at them.
So on the radio show that I have here at the school at WUML, which is the UMass Lowell's radio station, I have the show Star Charts, which is every Friday 4 to 6 p.m. A little plug there. But a science news that I recently covered on that show was a new neutron star that recently got discovered. And it was one of the fastest spinning objects in the galaxy. So this neutron star, which goes by the name 4U 1820-30, is one of the fastest because it spins at a rate of 716 times per second. That is how fast it rotates, but it is not the fastest, even though that is extremely fast, because there was actually another neutron star that was found before that spins at, for some reason, exactly the same rate of 716 times per second, which is PSR J 1748-2446.
The Schueller Observatory is very heavily oriented towards community outreach and serving the public, at large. Anyone in the world who's interested in astronomy, but more particularly people in Massachusetts and here in Lowell. So every month we have a public observing night. And any of you watching are very welcome to come. You don't have to make an advance booking. You can look on Facebook. The Schueller Observatory has a Facebook page. We have a web page also with a calendar. Whenever you see one of those open nights, please feel free to come. Bring your grandmother, bring your kids. People bring children. We have all ages come. And when you come, you'll meet our students. And they are really good at being very enthusiastic about astronomy and telling you all about the things that they find exciting and what they like to do. They'll be able to take images with you with the telescope that you'll be able to look at. So somebody comes in and says, well, I've heard about this thing called the Andromeda Galaxy. Can you guys look at it for me? So we could point the telescope at it and we could take deep images. And you could see the dust lanes in the Andromeda Galaxy and the spiral arms and all those kinds of things. Or we could look at the moon, whatever is up in the sky that night. There are many astronomy clubs, even in our local area. There's probably something like 10 or 20 astronomy clubs just in New England alone. And they're very, very welcoming. You can go to their meetings. They have all the cool toys. You don't have to buy your own telescope. Please don't buy your own telescope, right? All those people have already done that, and they want those telescopes to be used. They want you to look through them. It's an amazing thing, actually. You can go to many libraries in New England have a small telescope that you can borrow, that you can check out, and those will be put there by local astronomy clubs. You can come to the Schueller Observatory. You could subscribe to Sky and Telescope magazine, which is basically how I got hooked on astronomy as a child. I used to read that magazine every month and all through university, and now I still get really excited, and I still dream about having my research profile in Sky and Telescope one day. Who knows? Maybe it'll happen, right? So those are all ways that I think people could get into astronomy that they might obviously know about.
Honestly, best piece of advice if you want to get into astronomy, at least on the hobby side, is just start looking up at the sky whenever you can. You can start maybe looking at trying to pick out constellations and just find some reference and try to memorize them from that. You can just see if you can pick out different stars or planets in the sky. Just spend a lot of time looking up and learning what you're looking at.
Don't ever think that you are not smart enough to learn something. It is something that I saw a lot of peers of mine basically think of that, oh, I'm not smart enough to learn that. And I don't think that's true. And that's one thing with my science communication. I think everyone can learn science, and I think everyone can enjoy it. And I'm not saying that means everyone should go into science, because I also appreciate the arts. I appreciate other forms of science. I appreciate writing, or even just regular, retail jobs and whatnot. I appreciate everyone who does all jobs. But I do think there's something in science that everyone can enjoy in at least some way. That's one thing that I love with the Schueller Observatory, is just everyone from any walk of life, any background, anything can come and enjoy a little bit of science.